Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Inforunners podcast. And today we're going to be talking about, let me check my notes here, sewers and ants. Sewers and ants.
In sewer ants?
Oh, insurance! That's what we're talking about. Okay. As I already say, this is going to be a messy episode.
Stinky, messy, sticky. Ugh.
Well, I'm Dasein was here.
And this is Hayes.
Today we're going to be talking about the all-important insurance, being as, well, we had a very interesting week last week, and it was actually the one show which I actually pay the least attention to.
During the happy hour, they actually got two devs on, and they started talking about a number of topics, one of which was they covered insurance.
Yes, and they talked about many things about insurance, and let's just get something clear to begin with. There's actually something called premiums and deductibles. Deductibles are what we're paying right now, which is you pay up to a certain amount and then the insurance company covers it. Premiums are something they didn't really talk about, which are even though they said premiums a lot.
Disco Lando.
Premiums are what you pay up front to get your insurance. Like every 6 months on my car, I pay a premium, which is basically giving them money. And of course, there's all sorts of statistics to make sure they earn money. Then, of course, you have your deductibles, which up to a certain amount, as we said before, you cover. They cover it after you hit that, and that really comes into a lot of interesting economy things. Like if you ding your car, or let's say you ding your spaceship, you might just cover it out of pocket, so that way you don't start paying towards your deductibles, so your deductibles don't eventually go up. It's an interesting set of math and everything.
Particularly, they talked about how making sure that whilst you may have something like LTI, and LTI is forever, and you may not be paying premiums, but still the idea that they wanted a coalition of risk versus reward, and that the idea if you lose your ship, there is going to be a deductible to get that back. And this gives the idea that, maybe I don't want to lose my ship. Perhaps I want to look after my ship. I want to think of it as something valuable as opposed to something that I throw away every time I'm out of missiles.
You're out of missiles, you throw it away. Oh, there's someone at Korea. Let's go attack. Oh, there's some pirates. Let's attack. Oh, why would I run away? What's retreat?
Ramming speed.
Yes, Worf. Either way, this risk reward is important. Not only for the Millennium Falcon effect. I do love putting that one out. That's brilliant. Millennium Falcon effect. But it also helps with the sense of a death of a spaceman and all of that adding up to actions, consequences, and it also adds this other layer of, well, why do I want to be a PvP griefer? Like, seriously, when you start realizing the impact of this, it's going to make life difficult.
When you think about it, like, okay, I lost my ship, I paid the deductible, I lost my ship again, I have to wait twice as long and my deductible tripled. I lost my ship a third time, oh, fuck this. I'm going home. It's like, this is very anti-griefer type of mechanics, and even though this is the light version in 3.0, which you still have that option of waiting out your insurance, so
which is a really good thing, because
but then they talked about that changing in release, and the idea that even if you have to wait longer to replace a ship, that deductible is still going to sit there. There's no option to wait it out. So you have to sort of live with your consequences. They talked about the idea that if you lose a larger ship and then you have to pay back, let's say, 10% of its value, you may not be able to pay that deductible immediately. You may have to go off in a smaller ship and earn some extra coin to pay off that debt.
Well, that's a good and a bad thing, in my opinion, and this is where I'm really glad we're in alpha and changing development and all that, because it gives them time to balance consequences versus fun. because there's nothing worse than logging in, and this is my concern here. I log in one day, and well, I only have an hour to 2 hours to play. I start playing, and all of a sudden, something happens, and my ship crashes, and boom, I managed to eject safely. But now I have to sit here, and to play that ship, I have to wait maybe a day or two.
Yeah, but when you think about it, the whole idea of having consequences, that is fun. The idea that you try everything you possibly can to get out of there alive. You actually try to run away with your tail between your legs, and when you actually succeed, it'll be the most exhilarating thing in your life. And it is incredibly anti-griefer, anti-PvP, because those consequences against those people who continually take these risks, and the idea that the factions and the safe areas and the bounties all end up catching up to them, these people have to hang that debt around their head and deal with the consequences of their actions. That makes for a funner game for everyone else.
What PvP? I know you're saying PvP here, but what PvP? Let's just take a couple things for example. First of all, from what I understand with 3.0, there's not going to be an increase in server size, which means you've increased the map dramatically. Just look at those planets. Look at that Reclaimer video and see that little ship right there. And then just see them zoom out where you can't even see it. And this planet just still keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. And you're going, holy mackerel, that looks amazing. But how are you going to run into people? Seriously. And even when the game goes live, 10% of the population, roughly, from what they've been saying, is going to be people. Where are you going to run into people, really? Org v Org is going to not necessarily happen, and PvP, I know they say they want to force people in with dynamic missions when you don't know what that person's goal is. Why would I even engage in combat with someone when it's going to be very unlikely, first of all, that it's going to be an easy fight? I don't know the risks, and then I probably don't lose money if I lose, and if I win, I might still lose money.
Well, this is the thing. It takes two to tango. If someone doesn't want to fight you, they just have to run away. Interdiction, they're going to have a chance to get out, perhaps sustain some damage, but they're going to be able to run away from you. At the end of the day, in order for true PvP to sort of exist in the world, you have to have two willing parties to both engage against each other. And this will apply for individuals as well as larger groups, or even org versus org. I mean, if one org is in a mining in a big sector and another org wants to move in and they want to fight them, they have the option to say, well, we don't want to take the risks. We don't want to lose the ships and pay the deductibles. We just want to mine, and they move on to the next sector. And then it's, what are the other guys going to do? Nothing. They're going to watch them leave.
Well, why would you engage in combat in the first place? First of all, you wouldn't engage unless you knew you would absolutely win. But second of all, why would you engage in combat? I mean, most likely, as much as we've been doing this awesome series on fleets, combat, and all that stuff, the thing is, the pure operating costs, and let's just talk about operating costs for a brief second here, of a fleet. Look at the missiles. Just look at the missiles in the store for UEC, the one with actual cash. And just look at the missiles for the Retaliator, and just then come back and tell me how many dollars you're going to be paying for basically a Polaris or all the missiles or
any group who is industry focused, whether that be mining or reclamation or trade, they're not only losing money because they're not earning money when they go into combat, they then have to pay for all the repairs, all the replacement, the parts, any ships that they lost. They're essentially going backwards at that point. If they're given any chance to run away or avoid that situation and then start back up again, they're going to do it. The only time you're going to have long engaged military operations is against two sides who actually want to duke it out.
Or in the very rare occasion, you maybe find something extremely once in a lifetime, like, oh, I just found the one Bengal carrier in the entire game. I want that.
Yeah, the big money pit. Big black hole those things are, I reckon. If you ever find a Bengal, I'm going to take a group of reclaimers and chew down on it faster than anyone can notice, and hopefully be out of there in time before anyone else finds it.
You and your sacrilege. You're destroying this beautiful vessel. That is such an amazing thing, and of course, well, then you have to have 40 people. banning it at all times. What or
Yeah,
does that? But still, you're destroying a beautiful ship. But that being said, operating costs are going to be another factor there. And with insurance, just imagine now trying to insure these larger vessels, plus pay for the operating costs and everything. It makes LTI, as much as they are saying they want to make LTI kind of minimal, they minimize how valuable it is, I feel like they're increasing the value with this by the pure fact that you don't have to pay premiums, and your premiums go up the more risky you are.
Well, not only the premiums, that your deductibles might start increasing, and the wait time to replace the ship will also start going up. Any sort of reduction on the premium, if you had to renew your premiums and the premiums went up, you could find yourself out of some real pocket if you went on a continual run of hard times. That may actually prove more important to not have to pay the higher premiums because you have a lifetime contract, as opposed to paying premiums at all. Well, so for a high-risk individual who, constantly makes mistakes, that may be the most valuable aspect.
Or a large fleet. Just imagine someone that has a large fleet. And I will say it is nice that they did mention in this that you can actually insure an entire fleet as a fleet package. And that's actually nice. And there may be other types of insurance. And that's the one thing I'm scared of. They mentioned, the example that they mentioned the most was the racing insurance. Well, you have all these high valuable parts in here in a kind of a risky activity. So you have special insurance that covers everything. The parts are going to be the important thing in here, because just because I have LTI, that covers the base parts. But if you're having to do special insurance to get that, and it ends up being more or less cheaper than having to deal with the deductibles and everything for the secondary just parts insurance on your ship, that's going to devalue LTI.
I don't know. I think it all sort of evens itself out. And they did talk about other types of insurance, like being able to insure all your ships under a single policy, as opposed to having to nitpick for individual ships. And they've talked before about the ideas of having cargo insurance, or just insuring the whole ship on top of your regular insurance, so that any upgrades you have are covered under that. I mean, the idea is that you can pick and choose the type of insurance that you need or you decide to want. And a very sort of flexible sort of a system. So I think LTI is just like one sort of stepping stone to reducing overheads and costs. And I mean, on bigger ships, this is actually more important when you think about it.
Your job Avengers means nothing.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, if you lose your big ship, you may only have to pay 10% of the value, but the premiums are going to be pretty big. And it reduces the overall overhead by a fair margin. The bigger the ship, the more money you're potentially saving, especially for a single individual. Maybe not for a large group who has better purchasing and operational funding, but for individuals, there's a lot more value in that LTI.
Or smaller orgs, because a lot of people think about individuals. Like, we talk about individual a lot, but really when I talk about individual, I'm talking about 1 to maybe 5 people. You have 5 friends that play the game. You don't want to be in a big org because low drama, or however you want to put it, and you're just hanging out. It's going to be interesting. But
talking about individuals, I mean, like, they talked about the idea of, one guy losing his javelin and waiting up to 3 weeks. And, I can imagine if someone had to pay 10% of a javelin, they might not be able to afford to lose it and get it back in a reliable amount of time, unless, the money bags. Or this level of consequence will stop people taking their Idris Ps and their javelins out into anywhere that's even remotely risky, because without a proper crew to defend it, without proper escorts, they just can't afford to lose these, because they're one person. And these ships are truly group ships, because in their definition, if you lose them, you need at least a group of people being profitable and efficient in order to pay back the deductible. That's the definition of it's a group play ship, is whether you can afford to buy the deductible immediately after losing it.
Well, not just the deductible, but just completely ignore the deductible and start thinking about the pure operating cost of the ship for a second. Because seriously, you have your fuel, You have all of the other auxiliary things besides your fuel, which you're going to be looking at, whether if it's cargo ship actually buying cargo for it. Because a lot of people, they're either going to be getting a small portion paid movers, but the real profit is having the money to buy raw cargo and then turn around and sell it for pure profit on your own behalf instead of just being a hauler. And this adds a whole level of economy, in addition to the fact that when you look at insurance building into this economy here, you now have the insurance of insuring your cargo. Then you have the people that bring the ships to you. And then you have the fact that your certain ships that get destroyed a lot may increase in value, which then means certain people are going to be buying certain ships, speculating on the market on, oh, well, this ship is going to be extremely valuable soon because of XYZ.
Well, there's also the NPC costs with regards to ongoing operational costs. If you have any employees having to spread that money out, and the efficiency of, running in a larger group as opposed to a solo player with a bigger ship. Operating costs are a very huge and important part of this. And the idea that they've brought in risk and reward, reward is like, if you got a bigger ship, you could potentially earn more money. And then there's the risk in that you lose the bigger ship, you might not be able to afford to immediately replace that ship. And then it's balanced against group play, where you have multiple individuals increasing the efficiency and the ability for you to earn more money in order to cover that risk. And so very much this pushes the single individuals away from using larger ships and larger groups, manning larger ships and larger fleets and larger operations, because their increased earning potential, their increased efficiency, their increased ability to deal with the situation and earn money covers that risk. And so it encourages people to perform and operate in larger groups.
Well,
this is a really interesting direction they're doing.
Well, not only does it do that, but it also gives small ships some meaning, being as, well, I just want to do something on a whim. I'm going to take a smaller ship because it doesn't take as much planning, risk reward. It's not going to earn you necessarily as much, but it's going to be less risk. But it's also that's the type of ship, like I already know with like my fleet, I'm going to be taking out some of my smaller ships to earn a decent backlog of money so I can start taking out my larger ships and earning a lot more money, but I have a safety net to fall back onto. And that's where these small ships are now going to be, not just stepping stones, but they're also and filling these jobs that some of the larger ships can't fill, like a prospector being able to go onto a planet versus an Orion not being able to do that, but giving you safety net.
It's going to be important to have that safety net ship, that smaller ship. So if you shit happens, people are going to lose their ship. It may be, they just had a bad day or something else, but then what are they going to do? They're going to fall back to their Cutlass. They're going to fall back to their Aurora. They're going to use that ship to earn the extra little money they need to do to pay the deductible, and during the period that they have to wait for that ship to be replaced. So suddenly it makes sense to have a smaller, more efficient ship as something to fall back on during hard times.
Well, just because you pay the deductible doesn't mean that ship's going to arrive there instantly. Magic does not happen in this universe. That ship has to go from whatever system it is in. And if the ship is extremely rare, it may be hard to get a hold of, but in some cases, just because you have a rare ship, in my personal opinion, I think it's not going to be as hard to get some of these rare ships as some of the really popular ships that crash a lot. Like if you have a bunch of...
You could have a whole bunch of PvP griefers all crashing their Hornets, and there's a huge supply loss in Hornets, and then so if you have a Hornet, you have to wait an enormously long time because there's not enough of supply to meet the demand. The PvP griefers could crash the Hornet market.
Well, or any popular ship that's in the combat area. I mean, or even non-combat area. I mean, just as long as you have a ship that's either hard to get a hold of, or on the flip side is going to be so common that it has enough wrecks, but is also not as common as your like Aurora or Mustang. So
I wouldn't be surprised if like someone crashed their 890 jump, they had to wait 3 weeks, and someone crashed their Carrack, it'd probably only be a third of that. So let's say a week. That sounds about right.
it could even be more because you may have a spare 890 jump lying around, which in the system that the insurance company could pick up for you, versus all the people with the Carracks. Because there's more people with Carracks. The Carrack is a big, expensive, semi-rare ship, but it's still semi-rare. It's very popular. There's a lot of them, but you're not going to have as many of them as you would say a Mustang. But you may have, again, just because
more
you have an
people
890
crashing
jump.
Carracks in the moons.
Yeah. It's occupation. So
Yeah.
it could be interesting, and that is a whole new dynamic which a lot of people probably have not sat there and thought about, which is rare ships. Yes, they're going to be hard to get a hold of, but in some cases they may not be as rare as some of the more readily available ships that are higher risk. And each system is going to be unique, and they've already talked about that, and what ships you can get quickly because of what's available in the system.
Okay, and then we also have like other games, like you know how Elite Dangerous does it. When you lose a ship and it's insured, you 10% of the value of the ship or something, you have to pay that out before you get the ship back, right? But then they also had for original backers, they only pay half that much. So instead of paying the full 10%, their version of LTI was only to pay 5%. It's not a bad. We're actually starting to head in this direction. Before we were going with LTI, yep, no costs. You know, you just get your ship back. There's nothing. You pay nothing. So we've actually started to copy Elite Dangerous. Maybe not in the backers get half the rate, which wouldn't make that much sense. It'd be a little unfair, I think. But you know, we have started to move off in this direction, and I suppose this is then you have the other extreme is like Eve, where you know you go out in your ship and you get a PvP, then you lose everything, and it's like your fault because you were obviously in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Eve is just a harsh game to begin with.
Yeah.
But let's just go into now the next thing, which we have to talk about. Just talk about is insurance fraud, because that's a thing, and they've already said that insurance fraud on LTI or any insurance fraud could mean that you may not even be able to get insurance. Period. And if the ship has LTI, you'll lose it. That's actually serious, interesting, and I can see a lot of people trying to either game the system or a lot of people having issues because you loan it to someone on your friends list that you maybe not necessarily know, and they end up actually legitimately stealing it from you, and now you have the insurance company going saying, hey, you just are trying to fraud us right now.
There's going to be these GMs sitting there, they're looking at the logs and they're looking for patterns, they're looking for repeat type stuff, and then they'll go, hey, look at this guy. Oh, right. And then, you know, by then this guy's probably insurance frauded every ship he owns. And then they'll have a nice, you know, little tap concierge on the email, and it'll say, oh, Lou, we see what you did there. Thought you were real smart, huh? And then they strip every ship from LTI. And they're like, oh, I didn't mean it. They're going to get a huge sting in the ass.
Well, and the last thing that they really need to do is they need to give us a arena commander that's just like half of a sector, so we can actually take cap ships out and actually do PvP, because that will allow people to actually do profitable PvP, which is fun. They get to take those cap ships out instead of using them as force projection, but also makes it in such a way that orgs are willing to fight each other and actually have that type of fun.
Well, that makes perfect sense, because people have fun with that, and that scratches that little itch everyone has for the pure military sort of organization and sort of bigger scenarios. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't do it. There's every reason why they should do this, because those ships normally will need some sort of a financial backing, a reason, a purpose to be profitable, running alongside some other sort of industrial causes, or going into dangerous areas and escorting more industrial groups to do activities in very dangerous areas. And so I can see a lot of people who want their quick fix finding that too monotonous for them to just, because all they want to do is fight in these huge colossal battles. Mm-hmm. So once you start putting that into Arena Commander, they've got everything they want there. They'll probably spend more time in Arena Commander doing these epic battles than probably playing in the PU.
But again, it gives those people purpose, and it also gives everyone the ability to actually let that actually occur. Because, again, as we said, PvP is probably going to be very rare. It'll be PvE, and then PvE has its own risks, not only risk-reward, but how good are the bots? I mean, people are way more devious than bots, and that's one thing that Star Citizen has good bots, but there's nothing that beats an actual person sitting there and actually making the decisions.
It also sort of opens up the idea that you can have a competitive org scene where they take large military actions, and they don't care about the losses. It's all about, how far can we push these ships? How much better of a group are we than the others? And they can afford to take all the losses possible. I mean, I can see that being huge, and probably a lot more epic than anything you'd see in the verse.
And then more accessible to a lot of the people who don't want to risk that too, because then you have people who want to do it but will never touch it because, well, it's Death of the Spaceman. My guy has never died yet in 2 years of playing this game, and I never will do.
I just paid the deductible on my Idris for the 20th time this month. It's like, yeah, and I've got to grind at this sign job just so I can, go take my Idris to PvP again. No, at the end of the day, these people, they want to play with these ships all the time. They want to practice, they want to drill, they want to be competitive, they want to fight other organizations on a regular basis, and Arena Commander is the perfect platform for that.
Well, guys, what do you think? Insurance. Where do you think they should go? Are we wrong? Are we right about some of our speculation ideas here? What'd you like to see?
And we just hit over 300 on the subscriptions, big 300. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, guys, without your support, we would not be here. Actually, we probably would. We'd just be talking to no one.
We're talking to ourselves.
And looking for cat number 10.
Yeah.
Ask us about that later. One of these days during the bloopers, you're going to get the joke. But,
yep.
Guys,
it's an inside joke.
See you around.
Catch you around. Thank you.